In the waking slums, each raindrop carried the weight of the weave's exhaust. Microscopic filaments of discarded dreams, spent sedatives and burnt cognition drifting back down from the towers. When it hit skin, it tingled like memory trying to come back wrong. Lucian Thorne stood beneath a flickering awning made of stitched billboard vinyl and watched the rain soak into the street. The pavement was cracked into old circuit board patterns, the fractures glowing faintly with bioluminescent mold. Somewhere below, power lines hummed like sleeping animals. He held his brass compass in his palm. It was old, mechanical, heavy in a way that had nothing to do with mass. The needle spun slowly, never pointing north, only toward coherence, toward places where logic still held. The compass had saved his life once. It had ruined it too. A tram screeched past on magnetic rails overhead, trailing advertisements that projected directly into the optic nerve. Rest is productivity. Sleep with purpose. The weave cares. Lucian turned his face away, letting the rain wash the images out of his eyes. Across the street, a line of battery sleepers sat slumped against a charging wall. Ports bloomed at the base of their skulls like metal flowers, cables snaking into corporate sockets. Their chests rose and fell in shallow, synchronized rhythms, dreaming for someone else. Lucian felt the familiar pressure in his temples, the echo of architecture wanting to exist where it shouldn't. He ignored it. He had learned, painfully, that the world punished people who tried to shape it without permission. He was reaching into his coat for a stim stick when the whisper found him. Not a sound, a structure. It unfolded behind his eyes, the way a building reveals itself when you walk through the door without realizing you've crossed a threshold. A sudden awareness of symmetry where there shouldn't be any, of load-bearing thoughts, of intention. Someone was thinking at him. Lucian froze. The compass needle snapped to stillness. Lucian Thorne. The voice carried no gender, no warmth. It was precise, measured, like an equation spoken aloud. He didn't answer. You never acknowledged first contact in the open. That was how sensors marked you, how they followed the echo back to your skull and erased you from your own life. The rain thickened, drumming against the awning like fingers. You are difficult to reach, the voice continued. That suggests competence. Lucian slipped the compass into his coat and began walking, slowly, casually, toward the alley where the streetlights had died years ago. Try a billboard, he muttered under his breath. I'm not buying anything. A flicker of amusement rippled through the thought structure. You misunderstand. This is not commerce. This is excavation. The alley swallowed him whole. Steam vented from ruptured pipes, fogging the air with chemical heat. His boots splashed through runoff that glowed faintly violet. Lucian pressed 2 fingers to the port scar at the base of his skull. Old, poorly healed. He hadn't plugged in for months. Not since. We know about the collapse, the voice said gently. His breath hitched. Images threatened to surface, a spiraling cityscape folding in on itself, screaming users, gravity turning into suggestion. The moment his logic failed and took thousands with it. He stopped walking. You're either brave, he said quietly, or suicidal. Neither, the voice replied. I am necessary. A shape resolved in the steam ahead of him. Not a person, not exactly. A silhouette formed of negative space, like the absence of memory given outline. Streetlight bent around it, refusing to land. Lucian's pulse quickened. A proxy, he said. Cheap trick. Effective, the voice countered. We require an architect. Lucian laughed, sharp and humorless. You're about 5 years late. On the contrary, it said, you are precisely on time. The silhouette extended a hand. In its palm rested a wooden box, plain, unvarnished, wrong in a world where nothing stayed analog without reason. Lucian's compass vibrated in his pocket. This is not the object, the voice said. It is the promise of it. What do you want? Lucian asked. The rain stopped. Not gradually, instantly. Droplets froze in midair, hanging like beads of mercury. Steam stilled. Sound collapsed into a vacuum. The weave was bleeding through. We want you to break into the God mind. Lucian staggered back a step. That's impossible. Everything is impossible, the voice replied, until it is redefined. The frozen rain shattered, and the alley was empty. Lucian didn't go home. Home implied permanence, and permanence was a lie sold to people who couldn't afford escape. Instead, he descended 3 levels below the street into an abandoned metro station that had been converted into a drop den. The air smelled of antiseptic and rust. Echo was already there. She sat cross-legged on a concrete platform beneath a mural of a city cracking open like an egg. Her hair was shaved on one side, the rest falling in dark curls over one eye. Neural filaments traced faint silver lines along her temples, pulsing softly as she tuned the local signal noise into something only she could hear. At her feet lay her anchor, a slab of cracked marble veined with gold, stolen from a corporate cathedral years ago. Lucian felt the tension in his chest ease just a fraction. You look terrible, Echo said without looking up. Missed you too, he replied. She finally met his eyes, and the humor faded. You're bleeding. He touched his temple. His fingers came away wet. The whisper had left a mark. Someone found me, he said. Echo was on her feet instantly. Who? I don't know, but they know about the collapse. That did it. The air around Echo warped. The mural behind her rippled, buildings stretching and compressing as if made of rubber. Lucian raised his hands. Easy. She inhaled sharply, forcing the distortion down. The mural snapped back into place with a dull crack. Say it, she demanded. They want me to break into the God mind. Silence settled between them. Then Echo laughed. A brittle, fractured sound. Oh, that's rich. That's beautiful. They burn you, blacklist you, scrape your name out of the professional lattice, and now they want you to save them. Not save, Lucian said. Steal. Her laughter died. What? Something called the origin key. Echo's eyes narrowed. That's a myth. So was free architecture. She stared at him for a long moment, then turned away, pacing. The marble anchor scraped softly against the concrete as she nudged it with her foot. a grounding habit. "You realize what this means," she said. "If it's real, if it works." "I do," he said. "It shatters the cage," she whispered. "No more battery sleepers. No more In-Scapes hoarding infinity while the rest of us rot." Lucian leaned against a pillar, suddenly exhausted. "It also means going into the mind of the man who built the weave." "The High Archon," Echo said. 10 years in deep sleep. No one's ever come back from that close." Lucian closed his eyes. "I already didn't come back once." Echo stopped pacing. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "You won't do this alone." Vex Vane ran her operation out of a moving clinic, a retrofitted cargo rig that crawled the city's underlayers on treads thick enough to chew through debris and bone. Lucian hated the place. It smelled like copper and confession. Vex herself was leaning over a workbench when they arrived, dark hair pulled back, eyes flicking between half a dozen holo readouts. A copper coin spun endlessly across her knuckles, never falling. She didn't look up. "You're late." Echo snorted. "You're alive. We're even." Vex finally turned, gaze locking onto Lucian. Her mouth tightened, not in anger, but calculation. "So," she said, "the prodigal architect crawls out of the rain." "Miss me?" Lucian asked. "No," she replied, "but my sedative inventory just got nervous." He explained, briefly, precisely, no poetry. By the time he finished, the coin had stopped spinning. "You're asking for a drip profile that shouldn't exist," Vex said slowly. "Deep enough to rewrite subconscious law, stable enough to survive sentinels, flexible enough to extract raw thought." "And?" Echo pressed. Vex's jaw clenched. "And I can do it." Lucian frowned. That didn't sound like a yes. "It's a yes with a knife in it," Vex snapped. "The higher the drip, the more the dream fights back. Sensors don't just erase intruders at that depth. They rewrite them, turn you into furniture, metaphorically speaking." Echo smiled thinly. Lucian always wanted to be load-bearing. Vex ignored her. Her gaze stayed on Lucian. "You screw this up, you don't just die. You become part of him." Lucian thought of bone and obsidian, of a cathedral built from ideals that had calcified into prisons. "Then I'll build carefully," he said. Vex exhaled. "I'm in." Echo blinked. "That easy?" "No," Vex said. "I need the payout." "For what?" Lucian asked. The coin disappeared into her fist. "For someone who still believes the weave can be survived." Lucian didn't push. Secrets were structural. Remove them too early, and everything collapsed. They found Stitches in a surgical bay lit by flickering fluorescence, his hands buried in a man's chest. The man was awake. Lucian swallowed. Stitches glanced up, expression calm behind his respirator. "Give me 30 seconds." The man whimpered. Stitches murmured something soothing and kept working. When he finished, he sealed the incision with practiced ease and injected a sedative. Only then did he turn to them. His ticking watch hung heavy on his wrist, its sound unnaturally loud in the quiet room. "You're planning something stupid," Stitches said. Echo grinned. We always do. Lucian laid it out. Stitches listened, eyes flicking occasionally to the watch, as if counting something only he could see. When Lucian finished, Stitches nodded once. I'll come. That's it? Lucian asked. My sister needs care, Stitches replied. Real care, not corporate mercy. Echo clapped him on the shoulder. Welcome to the end of the world. Stitches checked his watch. About time. They gathered in the old metro station again, the air thick with anticipation and fear. 4 anchors lay between them. Lucian's brass compass, steady and patient. Echo's cracked marble, humming with stolen sanctity. Vex's copper coin, warm with secrets. Stitch's ticking watch, counting down to something none of them could name. Lucian looked at them, his crew, his sins, his last chance. Somewhere above them, the city dreamed for profit. Somewhere below, a god slept among bones. Lucian Thorne closed his eyes and began to plan a building that had never been meant to exist. And the weave, sensing intent, whispered back. Vex called it a graduated fall. That made it sound gentle. The injection burned like a memory forced backward through the skull. Lucian lay on a gurney beneath the shattered dome of the old metro station, cables blooming from the port at the base of his neck like steel veins. The world narrowed to sensation, pressure, then weightlessness, then the horrible certainty of being observed from the inside. Drip level climbing, Vex said, voice filtered through 3 layers of mediation. Baseline lucid, no distortion yet. Lucian focused on his anchor. The brass compass rested in his palm, its weight absolute. Not imagined, not metaphorical, true. The needle ticked once, twice, pointing not north but inward. This is real, he told himself. I am real. Around him, the others slipped under. Echo exhaled sharply as her neural filaments lit, the cracked marble slab hovering just above her chest like a relic, refusing to sink. Stitch's watch began ticking louder, the sound stretching, elongating, each second swelling into a full breath. Vex lay last, copper coin pressed to her tongue, eyes already distant. Passing threshold, Vex murmured. From here on out, physics is negotiable. Lucian felt the floor vanish. He landed on stone, cold, smooth, veined with something darker than shadow. Lucian rose slowly, compass clenched tight. The weave resolved around him not as code, but as intention made solid. A vast hall stretched outward, its ceiling lost in darkness, its walls composed of interlocking ribs, bone polished to a cathedral sheen. Welcome to the ossuary of ideals. Echo materialized nearby, kneeling, one hand pressed to the marble anchor. The air around her shimmered, bending like heat haze. Stitches appeared next, rolling to his feet with a grunt, watch ticking steady as a heartbeat. Vex emerged last, eyes sharp, already scanning. No doors, Echo said. I hate that. Lucian nodded. This place doesn't want exits, it wants containment. The floor beneath them pulsed faintly, as if breathing. Lucian closed his eyes and reached outward, not with force, but with definition. This was lucid logic, the art of declaring truth in a place where truth was optional. The floor is a foundation, he said softly, foundation support. The pulsing slowed, the sensation of being swallowed eased. Echo smirked, still got it. Barely, Lucian replied, let's move. They walked. The hall shifted subtly as they did, ribs reconfiguring, arches blooming and collapsing in slow, organic motion. This wasn't a building, it was a mind, dreaming itself into stability. Sunken ballroom should be ahead, Lucian said, if the maps are right. Vex snorted, maps lie, minds lie better. The air grew warmer. Sound returned, not echoes, but music, distant and warped. A waltz slowed until each note dragged like a corpse through water. They stepped forward, and the floor dropped away. They didn't fall. They descended slowly, ceremonially, like honored guests lowered into a grave. The sunken ballroom spread beneath them in impossible scale, a vast circular chamber filled with knee-deep black water that reflected nothing. Pillars of bone rose like drowned trees, chandeliers of crystallized thought hanging overhead, each shard containing a frozen memory. Lucian recognized some of them. Corporate galas, signing ceremonies, the high archons smiling, young and sharp, ideals still flexible enough to pretend they mattered. Echo shuddered, this place is obscene. The water rippled as their feet touched down. Music swelled. Figures emerged from the water, dancers, men and women in archaic formal wear, faces blurred smooth, mouths sewn shut. They moved in perfect time, bodies gliding through the water without resistance. Sentinel adjacent, Stitches muttered, memory loops. Lucian's compass needle twitched violently. Don't engage, he said. They're not guards, they're nostalgia. Too late. One dancer turned, its blank face tilting toward Echo. The air around her fractured instinctively, the ballroom walls stretching, compressing. The dancer split. Not violently, elegantly. Its body unfolded into a spiral staircase made of ribs and silk. Lucian swore, Echo. I didn't touch it, she snapped. It reacted to me. The staircase shuddered, steps rearranging, narrowing. Lucian stepped forward, heart pounding. The staircase is not a path, he declared. It is a cage. The ribs snapped inward. The dancer's form collapsed, dissolving back into water. The music stopped. For one terrible moment, the ballroom held its breath. Then the chandeliers turned. It didn't arrive. It asserted. One moment there was space. The next, space was being edited. A figure coalesced at the center of the ballroom, tall and thin, its body a patchwork of erased details. Where its face should have been was a smooth plane of static, eyes implied but never present. The censor. Lucian's vision blurred as something tugged at his thoughts, not painful, but insistent. Names flickered at the edge of his mind, places he'd lived, buildings he'd designed. Irrelevant, the censor seemed to say without speaking. Echo clutched her head, it's indexing us. Anchors, Lucian shouted. He forced his fingers around the compass, focusing on its weight, its click, its refusal to become metaphor. Echo slammed her palm onto the marble slab, the crack vibrating like a bell. Stitches grabbed his watch, pressing it to his ear, syncing his breathing to its rhythm. Vex bit down on her coin, copper tang flooding her mouth. The sensor advanced, water parting around it. Lucian stepped forward, terror sharpening his thoughts. "You are a defense mechanism," he said, voice steady despite the strain. "Defense mechanisms respond to threats." The sensor paused. "We are not threats," Lucian continued. "We are maintenance." The static face rippled. Echo whispered, "You're lying to a god." Lucian swallowed. "I'm redefining it." The sensor reached out, fingers elongating into lines of code made flesh. Stitches moved. He lunged, body blurring, hands striking pressure points that didn't exist in any anatomy manual. The sensor recoiled, not in pain, but confusion. Physical logic applied where it didn't belong. Vex hurled a vial at the water. It shattered, releasing a cloud of shimmering mist. "Neural irritant," she shouted. "Buys a seconds." Lucian seized them. "The water is not depth," he declared. "It is memory." The black water drained away, leaving the dancers frozen mid-step, exposed and brittle. The sensor faltered. Echo stepped in, eyes blazing. "The ballroom is not sacred," she said. "It is a lie." The chandeliers shattered. Light, raw, unfiltered, flooded the chamber. The sensor screamed. Not in sound, but in loss. Its form unraveled, lines of static collapsing into nothing. Silence slammed down. Lucian sagged, knees buckling. Stitches caught him. "Still alive?" Echo asked, breathless. "For now," Lucian said, "but we just rang the dinner bell." Vex wiped blood from her nose, drips destabilizing. "We stay too long, we don't come back." Lucian looked ahead. A door had appeared where none existed before, tall, obsidian, carved with faces that watched without eyes. "The inner sanctum," he said. Echo squared her shoulders. "Let's steal a god." As they approached the door, Lucian felt it again, that sense of being addressed. Not the whisper from before. Something deeper, slower, vast. The high archon stirred. And somewhere in the dark architecture of the weave, something began to remember Lucian Thorn. The obsidian door did not open. It remembered. Faces carved into its surface began to shift as the crew approached, features sharpening, softening, resolving into people. Lucian knew. Professors, clients, rivals, the woman who had signed the order that ended his career. The door exhaled. Lucian's compass spun wildly. "This isn't security," Echo murmured. "It's a resume." Stitch's watch ticked once, too loud. "Psychological filtration," Vex said. "It's checking for ideological alignment." Lucian stepped forward, despite the screaming in his skull. "The door is not a judge," he said. "It is an archive." The faces froze. Lucian pressed his palm to the cold obsidian. Archives are meant to be accessed. A seam appeared. The door split open with a sound like bones snapping under slow pressure. Beyond the door lay a cathedral that had never known light. The ossuary of ideals rose in tiers of ribbed arches and vaulted ceilings, each surface constructed from bone, human, animal, symbolic. fused with veins of obsidian that pulsed like slow-moving thought. Columns were carved from spines, stacked meticulously, vertebrae aligned with obsessive care. Everywhere, names were etched, not engraved, grown. Lucian felt his breath catch these odd beliefs. Echo stared upward, jaw tight. No, these are the dead beliefs, the ones he couldn't let go of. They walked between pillars labeled with ideals long since hollowed out. Meritocracy, security, progress, sacrifice. Each word radiated a low pressure, like gravity trying to pull the mind into agreement. Vex shivered. This is what happens when a man mistakes conviction for truth. Stitches stopped. His watch was ticking faster. Lucian followed his gaze. At the center of the ossuary stood a throne. The High Archon did not look like a god. He looked like a man fossilized mid-thought. His body was seated upon a throne grown from fused skulls and data conduits, his spine threaded directly into the architecture of the weave. Obsidian cables pierced his temples, chest, and limbs, feeding his mind into the system and back again in endless recursion. His eyes were open. They did not see. Lucian felt it then, the weight, not of power, but of endurance. This man had been dreaming for 10 years, holding the world together with nothing but belief and chemical sleep. Echo whispered, "He's holding the lattice in place." "Yes," Lucian said, "and it's killing him." The air thickened. The Archon's lips moved. "I dreamed of a city that would never fall." The voice did not come from his mouth alone. It resonated through the ossuary, through the bones, through Lucian's skull. "Lucian Thorn," the god mind said, "you built the first fracture." Lucian's heart hammered, "You know me." "I know all my architects," the Archon replied. "You gave the people freedom of form. They gave me chaos." Echo bristled, "You gave them cages." The Archon's head tilted slightly. "Cages are what keep the monsters out." Vex stepped closer, copper coin clenched tight. "And who decides who the monsters are?" The god mind smiled. "I do." Lucian forced himself to look away from the throne, scanning the chamber. The compass needle was no longer spinning. It was pulling hard toward a small altar behind the throne. There, a simple wooden box, unvarnished, untouched by the ossuary's obsession with permanence. "The origin key," Lucian breathed. The Archon followed his gaze. "Ah, the first thought." Echo's eyes widened. "You knew it was here." "I put it here," the Archon said. "Every system needs a seed, a truth so small it can be carried." Lucian stepped forward, every instinct screaming. "You can't keep humanity asleep forever," he said. "The weave was meant to be shared." "It is shared," the Archon replied calmly. "Distributed according to capacity." Stitch's voice was low, dangerous. "You turn people into batteries." "I turn survival into a function," the Archon countered. "Do you know how many times this world tried to end itself before me?" Lucian stopped at the altar. The wooden box vibrated softly, like a heartbeat. "You're afraid. Lucian said quietly. The Archon's smile faltered. Of what? He asked. Of waking up, Lucian replied. Echo moved to Lucian's side. Open it. Before Lucian could reach for the box, a blade pressed against his throat. Cold, precise. Vex stood behind him, eyes wet, jaw trembling. I'm sorry, she whispered. Echo spun Vex. Don't, Vex snapped. Don't make this harder. Lucian didn't move. Corporate? Vex nodded once. They promised to pull my brother out of the lattice. Full extraction, physical rehabilitation. Stitches swore softly. Echo's voice broke. You're trading the world for one man. Vex's grip tightened. I'm choosing my family. The Archon watched, fascinated. This, he said warmly, is why systems endure. Love is leverage. Lucian met Vex's eyes. There was no hatred there, only terror. You know, they won't keep that promise, he said. They will if you die here, Vex replied. Silence stretched. Lucian made his choice. The box is not a container, he said. Everyone froze. It's a transfer protocol, Lucian continued, a way to move consciousness out of centralized control. The Archon leaned forward for the first time. And where would you move it? Lucian swallowed. Through me. The ossuary shuddered. Sentinels stirred in the walls, faceless forms peeling out of bone like insects from a corpse. Echo stared at Lucian. What are you saying? The network can't be destroyed, Lucian said, not without killing everyone inside it. The Archon's eyes widened, not in fear but realization. You would become the bridge, he whispered, a living architecture. Lucian nodded, a lighthouse. Vex's blade fell away. Stitches grabbed Lucian's arm. That'll tear you apart. Eventually, Lucian said, but not before it frees them. Echo shook her head, tears streaking down her face. No, you don't get to martyr yourself without my permission. Lucian smiled at her, the same smile he'd worn when they were children, breaking into forbidden places just to see what was inside. Watch me. The sentinels closed in. The wooden box split open, and the first raw thought escaped. The sentinels did not rush. They revised. Bone peeled away from the ossuary walls, reassembling into tall, faceless forms whose limbs ended in tools rather than hands. Erasers, scalpels, seals. Each step they took caused the architecture to simplify, stripping ornamentation into raw function. Lucian felt memories loosening. Not his own yet, but close. Anchors, he said hoarsely. Echo slammed her palm against the marble slab, distortion rippling outward like a shockwave. Pillars bent. Names screamed as they warped. Stitches synchronized his breathing with his watch, muscles tightening, posture becoming deliberate, real. Vex pressed the copper coin to her forehead, whispering a chemical mantra under her breath. Lucian stepped forward into the widening fracture where the origin key had been. The wooden box was gone. In its place hung a lattice of light and thought, raw cognition, unfiltered and unfinished, the first idea humanity had ever shared voluntarily. Freedom. It burned. The god mind screamed as the lattice unraveled, obsidian conduits cracking, bone fracturing under conceptual strain. You would undo everything, the Archon roared. For what? Hope. Lucian didn't look back for choice. He reached out. The moment Lucian touched the lattice, Vex moved. Not toward him. Toward the Archon. Echo saw it a heartbeat too late. Vex. The chemist hurled a second vial, this one clear, humming with compressed sedation. It shattered against the Archon's chest, liquid light flooding his veins. Sleep, Vex whispered, deep enough to let go. The Archon convulsed, eyes rolling back as the drip spiked beyond safe thresholds. Lucian screamed as the feedback slammed into him, the bridge forming before he was ready. Stitches tackled Vex, slamming her into a column of spines. What did you do? She sobbed, bought us time. Echo stared at her, devastation naked on her face. You killed him. No, Vex said desperately. I freed him. The Archon slumped, consciousness collapsing inward, his hold on the weave loosening for the first time in a decade. The ossuary began to fall apart. Lucian was no longer standing. He was spreading. The lattice threaded through his thoughts, rewriting synapses into corridors, memories into load-bearing beams. He felt every battery sleeper at once, millions of minds pressed into corporate shapes, dreaming someone else's dream. It hurt. He let it. The bridge isn't stable, Stitches shouted. You're fragmenting. Lucian heard him from very far away. I know, Lucian said, or thought. I'm not meant to last. Echo ran to him, marble anchor clutched tight. Then I'll stay. I'll help you hold it. Lucian focused, forcing his remaining self to cohere. No, he said gently, you have to wake them. Her face crumpled. I can't do this without you. You already can, he replied. You just didn't want to. He reached out, not with hands, but with design, and redefined the space around Echo. The exit is not behind us, Lucian declared. It is through. A door tore open in the air, leading upward, back toward the waking world. Sentinels surged, shrieking silently as their authority dissolved. Stitches grabbed Echo, hauling her toward the opening. Move. Vex hesitated, eyes locked on Lucian. My brother. He'll wake, Lucian promised. All of them will. She nodded once, grief and relief colliding, then ran. As the crew fled, the High Archon stirred. Not in the ossuary. In reality. Alarms screamed through corporate towers as neural loads spiked and servers strained. In-Scapes flickered, luxury collapsing into raw subconscious spill. The Archon's physical body convulsed on its throne of machines, eyes snapping open for the first time in 10 years. And for the first time, he was alone. Inside the weave, Lucian felt the god-mind's absence like a collapsing ceiling. He braced, redefined. The bridge held. Lucian watched the weave open. Not shatter, breathe. Dreams slipped free of corporate gravity, flowing outward into decentralized space, finding new structures, new shapes. People woke in slums and towers alike, gasping, crying, remembering. Lucian felt himself thinning. Names peeled away. Lucian Thorn became load, became path, became signal. He anchored himself to one thing. The compass. Its weight was still there. Almost done, he whispered into the lattice. Sentinels dissolved into harmless fragments, their purpose obsolete. The weave no longer needed guards. It had a guide. As Lucian's individuality faded, something brushed against him, familiar, gentle. Echo. Not physically. Through the bridge. You did it, she thought. Lucian smiled, or the idea of smiling passed through the structure that used to be him. Not alone, he replied. What do we call you now? She asked. Lucian considered. A lighthouse, he said. Something solidified. Something permanent. The bridge stopped hurting. The first thing people noticed was the silence. In the waking slums, battery sleepers tore cables from their skulls and screamed, not in pain, but in absence. The weave's constant hum, the background pressure that had told them who they were allowed to be, was gone. In the towers, In-Scapes collapsed mid-fantasy. Corporate gods blinked out. Executives woke in silk beds with tears on their faces, clutching at dreams they could no longer buy back. Across the planet, humanity inhaled at once and didn't know how to exhale. Some celebrated, some panicked, some begged for the cages to be rebuilt. Echo watched it unfold from the roof of a derelict data center, rain soaking her jacket, marble anchor heavy in her pack. The city below her flickered between old advertisements and raw, unfiltered reality. They're scared, Stitches said beside her. Good, Echo replied. So was I. Vex sat a few steps away, hands shaking as she monitored emergency broadcasts. Corporate response teams are fragmenting. Without centralized dream control, they don't know how to coordinate. Echo glanced at her. And your brother? Vex swallowed. He woke up. They sat with that. Lucian did not sleep. He spanned. The weave was no longer a singular structure. It was a constellation, billions of private dream spaces, drifting, colliding, separating. Chaos, yes, but alive. Lucian felt each one like a distant star. He could not command. He could only signal. So he did. Where nightmares spiraled, he reinforced gentle boundaries. Where minds threatened to fracture, he offered orientation. Subtle cues, structural hints, the idea of ground. A lighthouse does not steer ships. It only reminds them where the shore is. Lucian felt echo when she thought of him, not as a voice, but as a resonance. He leaned into it, letting the compass guide him toward her frequency. She stood alone, eyes closed. Hey, she whispered into the rain, you still there? Lucian gathered himself, concentrating until coherence returned. Always, he replied. Echo laughed and cried at the same time. The world did not become better overnight. Some people never wanted freedom. They built smaller cages, personal ones, traded one authority for another. New cult architects rose, promising perfect dreams without consequence. Echo fought them, not with control, but with education, with teaching lucid logic not as power, but as responsibility. She taught people how to anchor themselves, how to recognize when a dream was lying. Stitches opened clinics, real ones, where bodies and minds were treated as inseparable systems. His sister recovered slowly, painfully, but awake. Vex disappeared for a while. When she returned, it was quieter, humbler. She ran a mobile lab that specialized in unwinding people who had been damaged by deep drip exposure. "I don't get forgiveness," she told Echo, "once I get work." Echo nodded. That's more than most. The High Archon lived. Barely. Stripped of the weave's scaffolding, he aged 10 years in 10 weeks. He spoke rarely, and when he did, it was with wonder rather than certainty. "I thought I was holding the world together," he said to no one in particular. Lucian felt the thought echo faintly through the lattice. "You were holding it still," Lucian replied gently. The Archon wept. No one recorded it. Lucian knew he was fading. Not all at once, but in pieces. Faces blurred, names slipped, the sharp edge of regret softened into something like acceptance. He anchored himself again and again to the compass, but even anchors erode when the tide is endless. Echo sensed it. "You're losing yourself," she said one night, voice tight. "I'm becoming what I built," Lucian replied, "and architecture always outlives its maker." She pressed the marble anchor to her chest. "I'm not ready." Lucian focused, pulling one last structure into place, a small, resilient node woven into the weave's foundation. "When you can't hear me anymore," he said, "follow the light that doesn't ask anything of you." Echo closed her eyes. "Promise me something." "Anything," Lucian replied. "Don't disappear all at once," Echo said. Lucian smiled, or the memory of smiling warmed the signal. "I won't," he said. Years passed. The weave became something new, not owned, not ruled, but shared, messy, human. Children learned to dream lucidly before they learned to read. Architects stopped designing prisons and started designing possibility. Some failed, some fell, but no one slept for someone else again. And sometimes, rarely, quietly, someone lost in a nightmare would feel a gentle pressure, like rain that didn't weigh them down. A whisper. This way, they never saw the lighthouse. They didn't need to.